Welcome in. Today we're doing something a little different, a deep dive into, well, it's not stats or policy debates this time.
Right.
You gave us Christine D. Schuck's The War on Drugs, An Old Wife's Tale.
Yeah,
And we're really diving into her personal story, her family's experience
definitely.
with the legal system after, well, they get caught growing marijuana at home.
And that's what makes it so interesting.
Yeah,
It's not the war on drugs from like 30,000 feet. It's, one family's journey.
exactly.
Through it all, you see the human impact in such a, I don't know, a raw way.
Right. Because we always talk about how these policies affect real people, and
Absolutely.
here we are, right into it. Christine and Dave, they seem like your average couple raising their daughter,
Hmm.
but they've got a secret going on in their basement, and it's not just any secret.
No, not at all.
It's a whole marijuana grow operation,
No.
and not some small-time thing either.
Right. Christine, she's very upfront about it.
Yeah.
They've got the high-tech equipment, special lights, fertilizers,
Right.
you name it. They've got it. They even figured out these really clever ways to deal with
The smell,
exactly, the smell. Got to keep it on the down low.
I can only imagine. So they were serious about it, not messing around.
No, definitely not. And they were good at it, too.
Yeah,
Christine talks about how they had it down to a system.
right.
They had a buyer all lined up, even just finished a big harvest.
They were doing well for themselves then, sounds like.
It seems like it.
But, and this is where I think it really hooks you in, everything changes so fast.
Yeah. That day the raid happened.
Right, Christine describes it, and it's not what you'd expect. No SWAT team busting in.
No, nothing like that. It's almost more unsettling in a way.
Oh, how so?
Well, they use a different approach. Way more subtle, almost psychological.
Okay, now I gotta know more. How does that even work?
So picture this. Christine and Dave are coming home, just bought these big new grow lights.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
They're unloading the car, and suddenly, bam, surrounded.
Oh.
3 black SUVs, no sirens or anything, just there.
Oh, man, that's gotta be terrifying.
Totally. And that's when the officers, they play it smart.
Yeah?
They see Christine and Dave were shaken up, and they use it to their advantage.
Wow.
They start talking about a peaceful resolution, cooperating, but then they drop this little reminder,
What do you mean?
just a casual mention of their daughter being inside the house.
Oh, wow, that sends chills down my spine.
Right. It's all very calculated, reminding them of what's at stake.
Man, talk about pressure. And this is just the start for them, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. This is just the tip of the iceberg for Christine and Dave.
So the raid's over, you'd think that's the worst of it, right?
You'd think so.
No!
Christine's story, it takes this wild turn.
Okay, what happens?
So they confiscated all their equipment, right? The lights, everything.
Yeah, it makes sense.
But then, get this, the task force, they auction it all off.
What? They can just do that.
Yep. It's called asset forfeiture.
I've heard of that, but I don't really get it.
It's pretty crazy when you think about it.
Hmm.
Basically, the government, they can take your stuff.
Like what kind of stuff?
Cash, cars, your house, even if they even just think it's connected to drugs.
Seriously, they don't even need to, like, convict you or anything.
Nope. And get this, it's often up to you to prove the stuff wasn't from illegal activities.
Wow, that seems, I don't know.
Messed up.
Yeah, like they already raided your house, took your stuff, and now you have to prove you didn't do anything wrong to get it back.
Exactly. And Christine does a great job explaining this, how this whole system, it could be so easily abused,
Totally. It's like they're already assuming you're guilty.
It's true. And there's this whole other layer, too.
What's that?
The financial incentives, like the police departments, they often get to keep the money from these asset forfeitures.
Wait, really?
Yeah, so it's like, talk about a conflict of interest.
No kidding. It's like a bad cycle or something.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And it all ties back to what Christine keeps saying, how this war on drugs, it's often more about money and control than, helping people.
That's a really good point. It's easy to forget about that side of things. But okay, back to Christine and Dave. They're in deep now, right?
Oh, yeah, facing serious charges.
So what do they do?
Well, they hire this lawyer.
Okay.
He's like a real shark, ex-prosecutor, his partner, a former drug cop.
Whoa, talk about knowing the system.
Right. Like they know all the tricks.
So what kind of advice did they give Christine and Dave?
Okay, so first piece of advice, get their cars detailed.
Their cars. What for?
Well, because they use marijuana, the lawyer just assumed they must have hotboxed their cars, thought there might be like residue or something.
Oh, man. Talk about judging a book by its cover.
Right. And Christine actually jokes about this in the book.
Really? What does she say?
Well, she talks about how the lawyer's partner, the ex-drug cop, he keeps like fiddling with his little wireless camera, telling her to smile for the camera.
Oh, come on. That's just messed up.
It is, but, it shows how these stereotypes about marijuana, They're everywhere, even in the legal system.
It's true. People just make assumptions. But okay, so they get their cars detailed. What else?
Well, they started doing regular urine tests on their own, even enrolled in drug counseling.
At that Pathways place.
That's the one.
Okay, so this is where drug court comes in, right?
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be this good thing, right? Like an alternative to jail, helping people get better.
In theory, yeah.
But from what we've talked about before, it doesn't always work out that way.
That's the thing about drug court. It sounds good on paper, but there are all these rules and expectations.
And they aren't always so clear-cut.
Exactly. Like, Christine talks about how she really struggled with this one thing.
What's that?
They wanted her to admit guilt before even explaining what the program would be like, what they'd have to do.
Whoa, really?
Yeah, like plead guilty without knowing all the details.
That doesn't seem right.
Right. And then there's Dave. They basically forced him to call himself an addict.
Even though he didn't see himself that way.
Exactly. He kept saying, look, I use marijuana, it's my choice. But they didn't want to hear it.
It's like they already had him in a box, labeled him.
And that's what Christine keeps talking about, this struggle, wanting to do the right thing, but also feeling like their voices, their truths were being silenced.
It's like walking a tightrope. So what happened with drug court? Did they actually start going? So they're stuck with drug court trying to navigate this system that doesn't really seem to care what they think.
Yeah, and it takes a toll. Christine talks about the stress, the constant scrutiny.
Like they're always being watched.
Exactly. Random urine tests, people showing up at their house unannounced, and it's all happening before they've even been convicted of anything.
That's wild. I mean, talk about pressure.
And then, on top of all that, they've got this counselor, right?
Okay, what about her?
Well, she's supposed to be helping them, but she just makes things worse. Like she's got this whole my way or the highway attitude.
Oh, I know the type.
And Dave, he's always been the kind of guy to think for himself, question things so naturally.
He butts heads with her.
Big time. Like he'll try to have a real conversation about his experience with marijuana.
Right.
You know,
Trying to understand it all.
exactly. But she just shuts him down. Like she doesn't want to hear it.
That seems counterproductive, especially in a setting that's supposed to be about, growth and understanding.
Totally. But the counselor, she takes it even further. Christine describes this one incident.
What happened?
Dave's trying to explain his perspective, and the counselor just loses it, compares him to a child rapist.
Whoa, hold on, what?
Yeah, can you believe that? Just because he dared to question her methods?
That is so out of line.
Tell me about it. But that's where Christine draws the line.
Good for her.
She writes this letter to the counselor, and it is powerful. She talks about her own experiences, the abuse her daughter suffered.
Oh, wow, that's a heavy stuff.
It is, and she makes it clear, Dave is not this monster they're trying to make him out to be. It's like this whole thing with the counselor, it just backfires spectacularly.
It's like they just made everything worse by trying to force them into these boxes.
Exactly. And it kind of highlights this bigger issue that Christine keeps coming back to.
About how the war on drugs, it's not always about what it seems.
Right. She starts digging into the history, the politics behind it all, and it's fascinating.
Like what kind of stuff?
Well, she talks about this guy, Harry Anslinger. He was like the top dog in the fight against drugs back in the day.
I've heard the name, but don't really know much about him.
Well, Christine argues that he was instrumental in demonizing marijuana, and not for the reasons you might think.
What do you mean?
She found all these quotes from him, like really racist stuff, linking marijuana to black men, saying it made white women want to sleep with them.
Are you serious? They actually use that kind of stuff to justify the laws.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
But it shows how much of this was rooted in fear and prejudice, not actual science or public safety.
It's like they were using marijuana as a scapegoat for something else,
Totally. And then there's this whole other layer. Christine talks about how big business got involved, too.
What do you mean?
Well, she uses this example of William Randolph Hearst, the newspaper guy.
Yeah, vaguely.
So he owned tons of timberland, used it to make paper, right? But he saw hemp as a threat because you can make paper from hemp, too, and it's actually better for the environment.
Interesting. So he felt threatened.
Exactly. And guess what he used his newspapers for? To spread all kinds of crazy stories about marijuana, how dangerous it was, linking it to crime.
No way. Just to protect his own interests.
It's wild, right? But it shows how economic interests can be so intertwined with, creating these narratives about drugs.
Makes you wonder what to believe,
Exactly. And that's what Christine's story does so well. It makes you question everything.
It's definitely been an eye-opening deep dive, that's for sure.
And it's not just about marijuana, it's about all these systems we have in place, the criminal justice system, the war on drugs, and how they impact real people, you know?
It's about the human cost, right? The families like Christine and Dave's who are caught in the middle of it all.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder, are these systems actually working? Are they really making things better?
It's a question we should all be asking ourselves, right?
Definitely. And I think Christine's story, it gives us a good place to start that conversation.
Couldn't agree more. Thanks so much for this deep dive. It's been fascinating.
My pleasure. Always enjoy these conversations.
And to our listeners, thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.